talk about the New Orleans Saints and everything that they have done so far in the offseason. We'll talk about the Derek Carr news and the update with his shoulder. And this will involve everything from the NFL draft through the free agency period. So let's start with the biggest thing they did this offseason. They fired Dennis Allen. Thank you. Dennis Allen was one of the worst head coaches in the NFL with the Raiders many decades ago and also with the New Orleans Saints. They had a couple of good moments with Dennis Allen, but overall he was a terrible head coach and it was time to move on. They went out there and as soon as the Super Bowl was over with, they hired Kellen Moore to be the brand new head coach. I love this move. Give him some time. Give him up to 5 years to fully rebuild this organization. The thing with the New Orleans Saints is this. They have been terrible with cap management over the last 10 years. And that's all on Mickey Loomis, the general manager. That's why Sean Payton retired for a season and went over to the Denver Broncos. But when I look at Kellen Moore, everywhere he has been in the NFL, players love him. And executives, they also love him. He was a very good offensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys. You may say, so why didn't they hire him to be the head coach? Mike McCarthy wanted him gone. Mike McCarthy went to Jerry Jones and he said, Kellen Moore does not run the football effectively enough. I want to call the offensive plays. He threw the man underneath the bus. Mike McCarthy lied just to go out there and run the football less than Kellen Moore did with Dak Prescott and everyone else involved in that situation. He goes over to the Los Angeles Chargers. He was willing to deal with Justin Herbert early on. Justin Herbert suffered a crucial thumb injury. He couldn't take snaps from under center. It hurt the run game. But Kellen Moore tried his best to go out there and still run the football and get the most out of Justin Herbert. And as the season progressed, Justin Herbert was dealing with more injuries. They pulled him for the rest of the season. He was placed into a bad situation yet again. They fired Brandon Staley. They brought in some brand new coaches with Coach Harbaugh and Greg Roman. That was not on Kellen Moore. Before that thumb injury, the offensive system looked pretty good. And Austin Eckler was having a very good season up to that point. He goes over to the Philadelphia Eagles. Remember when Mike McCarthy said he doesn't run the football effectively enough? He produced one of the best offenses in the NFL with a brand new rushing system behind Jaylen Hurst. And give him credit for this. Jaylen Hurst was one of the worst quarterbacks against the blitz the year before with Coach Johnson. Kellen Moore comes out. He's running more motion plays and he helped Jaylen Hurst get over that weakness against the blitz. That's all on Kellen Moore. So everywhere he has been, he's adapted to running the football with Saquon, a pass-heavy attack with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott had some of his best years with Kellen Moore being the offensive coordinator and the work he did with the Los Angeles Chargers. He's a smart coach. So that's the A+ move, in my opinion, with the New Orleans Saints. I'm not saying that he makes him a Super Bowl contender or a playoff contender out the gate, but he's going to be a great head coach long-term with the Saints. I'm not the biggest fan of him hiring Brandon Staley as his defensive coordinator. The only good stint that he had was with the Los Angeles Rams, and he had a lot of talent with their defense. But as a head coach, he wasn't the best with the Chargers. He did make a playoff appearance with the Los Angeles Chargers, but they got blasted by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they were up major in that matchup. His defensive adjustments, they're non-existent at times. He runs his defense based off of talent alone. We'll see how he can work out with the Saints. I'm willing to give him another try. But when I look at Kellen Moore, he's easily going to be the best and most important coach with the Saints moving forward with his offensive play calls and him just managing the game overall. With the 9th overall pick, they selected Kelvin Banks Jr., tackle out of Texas. Phenomenal pick. A lot of insiders and a lot of people in the national media in general was saying that this could possibly be Shedeur Sanders. Looking back at it, I'm happy that it wasn't Shedeur Sanders because he slid in the NFL draft. But you get Kelvin Banks. They needed to bring in another offensive lineman. Sadly, Ryan Ramczyk had to retire because of that knee injury. You selected Talasay Fuaga in the first round last year. He was a very good rookie tackle last season. Kelvin Banks can start right now. And it tells me a lot about Trevor Penning. He's not going to be the long-term starter at the right tackle position. And that sucks because you selected him in the first round. But Trevor Penning, his rookie season, wasn't able to stay fully healthy, was dealing with a foot injury. He's a holding machine at times, and overall, he's just not a good, consistent starting tackle at the right tackle position. Kelvin Banks can come in, and he can be that for you. You now have an offensive line when they're fully healthy. Talasay Fuaga, Eric McCoy at the center position. Cesar Ruiz, we'll see if he can be more consistent at the right guard position, and Kelvin Banks. So we'll see what happens with the offensive line. They've invested a lot of money in this offensive line and a lot of resources overall in draft capital. Eventually, something has to give. The New Orleans Saints potentially in the next couple of years could have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And we saw them for the first 2 games of last season. I know it's just a 2-game sample size. They were steamrolling teams when they gave Derek Carr enough time inside the pocket and when Alvin Kamara could have time and space to make those moves. And you have a lot of good weapons on the outside with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. I love this pickup with Kevin Banks Jr. from Texas. You could have went quarterback here, but I'm happy that you did. This was a weak quarterback class to many. There were still some talented players on the board on the offensive end. You could have went out there and brought in a wide receiver if you wanted to, but I really like Chris Olave. I'm still a huge fan of Rashid Shaheed and the talent that they have at the tight end position with Juwan Johnson. A+ hit. And I said this a couple of days ago in a video with Will Campbell and the New England Patriots. It's not the sexiest pick when you get an offensive lineman. I compared it to fixing the roof on your house. You may want to go out there and fix up your car. May want to get bigger lights or new rims or something like that with your car, or just a new radio system. That's fun. Selecting an offensive lineman is not fun. They're not a skill position. But boy, when your offensive line is not set, it shows every single week. And I don't care how many times they change the rules in the NFL. One of the most consistent groups that is best to have moving forward is going to be offensive line play. So I love this pick. With the 40th overall pick, I hate this pick with the New Orleans Saints. They selected Tyler Shutt, quarterback out of Louisville. And before you come on here and just hate and say you wanted them to get Shedeur Sanders, that is true. But at the same time, if they were to select Shedeur Sanders, I'll also question that decision. You have Spencer Rattler. Give him a chance. He never got the opportunity last season to play with a fully healthy team. He did not put up the best numbers, but at the same time, he's a rookie quarterback. He didn't get the first team reps. Derek Carr did. He was placed into a terrible situation with a hurt offensive line, number 3 and number 4 wide receivers. And he had a okay debut against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They rushed him into a game against the Denver Broncos short week. He looked completely terrible. He was not ready to play just yet. And there's still a lot of upside with Spencer Rattler. At the college level, he went from Oklahoma. He was being coached up by Lincoln Riley. If it was for Caleb Williams, they would have stuck with him. But instead, they go with Caleb Williams. His own home team booed him. He was a kid. He was a teenager. So he goes over. He transfers to South Carolina. I would love to see Spencer Rattler be the starting quarterback straight out the gate if Derek Carr is not fully healthy, and see what you have. It's not going to hurt you. You have draft picks next year. You could potentially draft a quarterback in Arch Manning, Drew Aller. We'll see how those quarterbacks look coming out of college. But the reason why I hate this pick, even if it was Shedeur Sanders, Will Johnson was still on the board here. You still need a secondary help. You just traded Marshawn Lattimore to the Washington Commanders. Another great move, by the way. It was time to get off of some of those contracts and some of those veteran players. But you go with Tyler Shutt. 23 passing touchdowns and 6 interceptions his last season with Louisville. He played in 6 seasons at the college level. He went to Oregon. It didn't work out. Dealt with injuries. It was time to move on. Goes to Texas Tech. It didn't work out. Dealt with injuries. It was time to move on. He has major injury concerns, even for a backup in the NFL, and he's 25 years old. I know that Spencer Rattler may not be Kellen Moore's guy. He may look at Tyler Shutt. He may say, hey, I see a big quarterback that I could possibly build with, not with that injury history. He reminds me of Derek Carr, and I'm not the biggest fan of Derek Carr. Derek Carr right now is dealing with a shoulder injury. So for the people that are saying that Derek Carr's going to be the week 1 starter, I'll pump the brakes. He may get surgery. He may not get surgery. When I'm looking at the situation with Derek Carr, you have one of the worst contracts in the NFL anyway. He's not going to be the long-term starter for the next 5 to 10 years. Even if Derek Carr is fully healthy, you may say this is messed up. I will still go with Spencer Rattler. This man's taken this long on this shoulder decision to whether he needs to have surgery or not. I'm completely over it if I'm Kellen Moore. I would go with Spencer Rattler, see what he has. If it's a completely terrible experience, you know what you have in Spencer Rattler, a bad quarterback. But if he goes out there with the talent that you have with Olave, if he can stay healthy, the same with Rashid Shaheed, one of the top deep threats in the NFL, you're working with something. But to overreach on a quarterback with a 40th overall pick and you had other needs with this roster, it just makes you scratch my head. Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan, would have been a perfect fit. He only had 1 season where he was dealing with injuries, and that was his last season with Michigan. He's a tremendous glue corner on the outside, and you need cornerback help in this division. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they went up, they drafted Emeka Egbuka. Look at the Carolina Panthers. They have T-Mac now, Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen. The Atlanta Falcons, Darnell Mooney. The same with Drake London. Everyone in this division, they have special wide receivers. So why not just go out there and bring in another player in the secondary to help out this defense? I just hate the pick of Tyler Shutt. Besides that, I love everything else the New Orleans Saints did in the NFL draft and in free agency. With the 71st pick, they selected Vernon Broden, defensive tackle out of Texas. Very good run-stopping defensive tackle, 6'4", 310 pounds. You have a former coach on Texas that is now a coach for the New Orleans Saints at the defensive line spot. I love this pickup. He comes in, he can stop that run. Brian Bresee is known for just going out there and getting to the quarterback on a consistent basis with their young defensive line. And Brian Bresee is a very good pass rusher, 7.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. You can make the case from last season, he was the best pass rusher. He could play defensive end, he could play defensive tackle. Usually he's a defensive tackle, especially when he was coming out of Clemson. But we saw the versatility. It's there. And you have Carl Granderson on the opposite side, 5.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Just the season before, he led the New Orleans Saints in sacks. You need to bring in some more defensive linemen behind Cameron Jordan. Cameron Jordan has not been a good, consistent pass rusher in many years now, and his career is winding down. So you have Devon Gotcha, and you bring in Vernon Broden. That's a very good deal to have this big defensive line that can go out there and stop the run. Once again, you have Bijan Robinson in this division, over 1,000 rushing yards last season with the Atlanta Falcons. They also have Tyler Algier. You look at the Carolina Panthers, they have one of the best offensive lines in the NFC. They have Chuba Hubbard. They love to run the football very effectively. And the same with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially from last season. So getting in more defensive players up front and a clear defensive rotation is definitely going to help you out. And that's one of the weaknesses with Brandon Staley and his defense, gap responsibilities and stopping the run. So the more that you have up front in terms of just big bodies that can just stop the run on their own, the more the merrier. With the 93rd pick, they did select Jonas Sanker, defensive back from Michigan. He's a definition of a do-it-all defensive back. He could play cornerback, he could play strong safety, he could play free safety. He's not an outside corner, but he can play inside the slot. When you look at the New Orleans Saints over the last 4 to 5 years, they have produced a young, strong secondary. By getting Jonas Sanker, he can come in for a couple snaps. He can be that Tyrann Mathieu replacement. You know, in the past, in Tyrann Mathieu, when he first came out of LSU, he was a cornerback, safety. He played all over the backfield in terms of just playing on the back end of the defense. That's what Jonas Sanker can do out of Virginia. And this is a steal. At a second round grade, a high second round grade on Jonas Sanker. He slides all the way down to the 93rd pick with the Saints. That's a great pickup. So you have 3 players I really am infatuated in and that I really love to be on this roster right now with the Saints. They're knocking out the park. With the 112th pick, they went with Danny Stuntman, linebacker out of Oklahoma, tackle machine, another player that can go out there and be physical and stop the run. The thing is with Danny Stuntman, he's not going to go out there and just make a bunch of plays on the football. He's an old school linebacker. You have him sit in the middle of the defense. He can stop the run. That is what he is known to do. At the Oklahoma level, he was easily their best linebacker over the last 3 to 4 years. And that's what you're looking for if you are the New Orleans Saints. More beef up front to help out players behind your front 4 to front 5 guys. It's a great deal. Overall, when I look at the New Orleans Saints, a very underrated offseason. They were stuck with Derek Carr. They had to restructure that contract. I know that it sucks. Mickey Loomis, he gave him that contract. So he has to find a way to go out there and push the can down the road and try to restructure deals. So eventually one day they can offload some of these veteran players. The Saints right now, they're still in a tough spot. Once again, they're not going to be a major playoff contender early on with Kellen Moore. But he can make some good runs. He can make some good games. Very interesting moving forward with the pieces that he has. When I look at the defense, they have a lot of older players. Like I mentioned before, you're bringing in some young players. You brought back Chase Young. Chase Young was hot and cold last season. 5.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. You brought him back on a cheap deal. I think that he'll be solid once again for the Saints. On the back end of your defense, Kool-Aid McKinstry, there's a lot of upside there with him being the number 1 cornerback with Alontae Taylor. Alontae Taylor, 0 interceptions, but 16 pass deflections. Kool-Aid McKinstry, when he came in, he looked very good last season. And you still have Tyrann Mathieu. You went out there, you signed Justin Reed, 2 interceptions, 9 pass deflections. He's a definition of a dual threat safety. Can stop the run, can make a lot of plays on the football in the air. When I really look at the defense last year, their Achilles heel was stopping the run. So having versatile players up front should help out with that, and especially with having a player in Justin Reed who can take tight ends away, who can cover the middle of the field, can cover running backs out of the backfield. Just a very good Swiss Army knife to have alongside Tyrann Mathieu. And I know Tyrann Mathieu, he's getting older, but he is still a very good safety to have, especially for him to be a veteran. So overall, when I look at the New Orleans Saints, I like their defense and I like the pieces that they brought in. It just comes down to one man, and that's Brandon Staley as a defensive coordinator. Willing to give him one more shot, but I'm not the most confident person on Brandon Staley. And back to their offense for a quick second. I know that I said a lot of things about the wide receiving core. Chris Olave, if he can just stay healthy, he can be a special wide receiver. He's dealing with concussion injuries. If he suffers with injuries for this upcoming season, it'll be time to move on. And I look at Rashid Shaheed. He's so special in terms of just being that deep threat. I really hope that they give Spencer Rattler the opportunity to be that starting quarterback moving forward for at least 4 to 5 games to see what he has, because he can gel with these wide receivers. You give him the first team reps. And I looked at Spencer Rattler with Oklahoma. He has some good times. And just because you were a great college quarterback at times doesn't mean that you're going to be great in the NFL. We've seen this over and over again with quarterbacks like Johnny Manziel and Tim Tebow. Spencer Rattler was dealt a raw deal with Oklahoma. Spencer Rattler goes over to South Carolina and goes underneath the radar. Many people are talking about his immaturity issues. He was on a Netflix documentary with the quarterbacks and how he was throwing the teammates underneath the bus. He was a kid. He wasn't even 18 yet when they were shooting that documentary. He was still a teenager. He was in high school. Give him time to develop and see what you have in him. But I look at Tyler Shutt. I don't want to just come on here and just completely get rid of him. But I look at that injury history, man, and I see that Tyler Shutt is 25 years old. Maybe he can come out. He could be a solid quarterback with the New Orleans Saints long term. That's a perfect deal. But if Spencer Rattler can't work out, you see what you have in Tyler Shutt. If you have a top 5 pick next year, accumulate some picks. Try to pick swap with someone in the first round and go take your quarterback, whether it's Arch Manning. That would be crazy because Archie Manning was the last quarterback that they selected in the first round many years ago. And I know a lot of Saints fans on my channel, in my comments, they wanted Shedeur Sanders with the 9th overall pick, especially if he was there with the 40th overall pick. I'm just saying this. The way that Shedeur Sanders failed in the NFL draft, they had the opportunity to pick him up later and just go with a cornerback with the 40th overall pick. But it's a solid draft class for the New Orleans Saints. They still have a lot of problems moving forward with Mickey Loomis and their cap concerns. We'll see what happens with Derek Carr moving forward. If he's able to play, more than likely they'll place him out there. He's a veteran. They're paying him so much money. In the tight end position, I believe that it is set with Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson is a very good receiving tight end when he's fully healthy. 548 receiving yards last season, 3 receiving touchdowns. And another big part to why the Saints weren't that successful, despite the fact that Dennis Allen was horrible as a head coach, they dealt with so many injuries. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about the New Orleans Saints for this upcoming season? And did they do the right things in the NFL draft? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for the video, guys. God bless.